Welcome to another topic in history. History through inscriptions, kings, farmers, and towns. Indian society and economy underwent significant changes during a period of 1500 years after the end of the Harappan civilization. The people living along the Indus and its tributaries composed the Rig Veda, which is the earliest known text or literary source. States, kingdoms, and empires started emerging from around the 6th century BCE. More significant was the development of the emergence of new towns in different parts of the Indian subcontinent. By now I think you know how sources are really important and significant in the study of history. In each and every topic in history, sources are very reliable and they give us a lot of information about a particular topic. Let us look into Mauryan sources. Historians have used a range of sources to reconstruct the history of the period. They have made effective use of inscriptions, texts, coins, and even visual material. Of the available sources of information, Ashokan inscriptions enjoy a significant position, and they were engraved on stone and placed either along trade routes or in the vicinity of towns. These inscriptions are written in Prakrit, the language of the people. There consist of 14 major rock edicts, several minor rock edicts, and 7 pillar edicts. Now, what is an inscription? A historical, religious, or other record which is cut, impressed, painted, or written on stone, brick, metal, or other hard surface is an inscription. For example, pillars, rocks, walls, etc. In addition to the above, there are several literary texts, both in Sanskrit and Pali. The Jataka, which is written in Pali around the middle of the first millennium CE. These stories probably originated as oral tales. Subsequently, they were committed to writing. The Sri Lankan chronicles are sources of information. So these are literary sources of information during the period. The Arthasastra of Kautilya and the Indica, written by Megasthenes, who was a Greek ambassador to the court of Chandragupta Maurya. They were also very important sources of information, which gives us enlightenment regarding the Mauryan Empire. So in this video, we will look into the pre-Mauryan age and the kingdoms that were there before the emergence of the Mauryan Empire. But we rely on these sources even for those times. So we have covered both literary as well as archaeological sources. Archaeological sources being the rock edicts, pillar edicts, and the most important of literary sources here are the Arthasastra of Kautilya and Indica, written by Megasthenes. The rediscovery of Ashoka. Until about 100 years ago in India, Ashoka was just one of the many kings. His name was mentioned in the Mauryan dynastic list included in the Puranas. However, in 1830, James Princept deciphered an inscription written in the Brahmi script. Many such inscriptions were found in which the king referred to himself as Devanampia Piyadasi. Devanampia meaning beloved of the gods, and Piyadasi means pleasant to behold. The name Devanampia Piyadasi did not tally with any mentioned in the dynastic list. However, it was mentioned in the Buddhist Chronicle of Sri Lanka. The final confirmation came in 1915 when another edict was found. In this, the king calls himself Devanampia Ashoka. The Maski edict uses the king's personal name Ashoka. This, corroborated by the Sri Lankan chronicle Mahavamsa, established that Ashoka was the Devanampia Piyadasi of the inscriptions. So these were the problems of inscriptions in earlier and later times. At first, nobody knew how important Ashoka was, but with the linking of the chronicle from Sri Lanka, which is Mahavamsa, Later, the terms Devanabhya Piyadasi came to be understood that these terms were used for Ashoka and by Ashoka himself. With the successful deciphering of edicts in a variety of languages, the scholars used inscriptions and texts to reconstruct history of the period. By the early decades of the 20th century, the historians had been able to put in place the broad contours of political history. Gradually, the scholars shifted their focus and studied the context of political history. They tried to ascertain connections between political changes and economic social developments. The historians did notice links, but they were neither simple nor direct. Earliest territorial states. The Mahajanapadas. In the 6th century BCE, there arose large states with towns as their seats of power. Panini makes it clear that the people owed allegiance to the Janapada which they belong. The traditional literature mentions 16 large states, also known as Mahajanapadas, each comprising many agricultural settlements. Those were Janapadas. So the term Mahajanapadas were essentially large states. Maha meaning large and Janapadas means some kind of a territory, or in a modern term, state. We do not know much about the Mahajanapadas due to the lack of sources. It is however known that each Mahajanapada had a fortified capital. They maintained armies and bureaucracy. The rulers raided neighboring countries to acquire wealth. These raids were considered legitimate. It is also known that the Mahajanapadas did not have a uniform or similar administrative patterns. In the 6th century BCE, out of the 16 Mahajanapadas, only 4 states, which were Kashi, Koshala, Magadha, and Ujjayini Confederacy, remained important. They fought for political supremacy. Eventually, Magadha emerged victorious and became the center of political activity in North India. Now let us look into Magadha, the foremost Mahajanapada. Scholars ascribe the rise and expansion of Magadha solely to the individual rulers such as Bimbisara, Ajatasattu, etc. But now scholars take note of something deeper. Magadha enjoyed a favorable geographic position which enabled it to control the Gangetic plain with a strong agricultural base. The thick forests beyond Gaya supplied timber and elephants. Magadha also controlled the supply of the richest deposits of copper and iron ores in the hills beyond Gaya. Thus, the rulers could manufacture better weapons and implements. Magadha was the most important of all Mahajanapadas. Initially, Rajagriha was the capital of Magadha, but later Pataliputra, which is in Patna in Bihar, became the Magadhan capital. It was situated at the confluence of 3 rivers, the Ganga, Sone, and Gandak. This position enabled the Magadha rulers to exercise control over river traffic. All these factors account for the expansion and stability of Magadha. Now, why are we studying about Mahajanapadas, Magadha, and the early territorial states? This Mahajanapada, known as Magadha, was important because later this paved way for the emergence of the Mauryan Empire, which we will look into in the next video.